In the endless expanse of what traders called the Void Sector, silence reigned supreme. This desolate region of space was a graveyard of ancient wars, where twisted hulks of spacecraft drifted like silent monuments to forgotten conflicts. Asteroid fields wandered aimlessly through the void, their slow ballet a stark contrast to the violence that had birthed them. Most star charts marked the area with a simple warning: ships enter, ships don't return. It was exactly why Peter Novak liked it. His salvage vessel, the scrap heap, was little more than a cockpit with engines and a cargo hold, just enough to haul whatever treasures he might find amid the ruins. The ship's dimly lit interior reflected Peter's preference for solitude, the control panels casting a soft blue glow across his weathered features. A plasma rifle hung on a nearby wall bracket, not that he ever expected to use it. The small solar collection array he'd installed was enough to keep him operational in this forgotten corner of the galaxy. Peter had spent years in this routine, scanning wreckage, collecting valuable components, and occasionally trading at the lone outpost at the sector's edge. Sometimes he wondered if this was all his life would amount to, a nomad drifting through space junk, never making a real difference to anyone. But the simplicity had its appeal. No bureaucratic oversight, no corporate quotas, just him and the void. The legends of the cosmic wolf occasionally crossed his mind as he worked. Space traders whispered about the creature in hushed tones, a predator that stalked the emptiness, appearing as a wolf-like entity before vanishing again. Some claimed it was responsible for missing exploration vessels, though Peter had dismissed it as spacer folklore, designed to keep rookies from encroaching on lucrative salvage territory. Today's operation was typical: a damaged freighter with promising metal alloys in its hull. Peter was methodically cutting through a bulkhead when his comms system emitted a harsh, unexpected sound. A distress signal, but not on any standard emergency frequency. The sound was unlike anything he'd heard, a high-pitched, undulating cry interspersed with what sounded disturbingly like howling. Protocol was clear: report to Central, then proceed with caution, if at all. But the nearest Central relay was 3 days away at best speed. By then, whatever was broadcasting would be long dead. Peter hesitated, his finger hovering over the navigation console. The signal's coordinates placed it deep within an uncharted region of the Void Sector. No registered vessels should be there. Nothing should be there. "This is a bad idea," he muttered to himself. Even as he punched in the coordinates, the scrap heap's engines rumbled to life, pushing the small craft toward the mysterious signal. 4 hours later, Peter found himself approaching something that defied explanation. It was a ship, or had been once, but its design followed no human convention. The massive vessel had a spiraling, organic structure, as though it had grown rather than been built. Its hull was covered in oxidation and what appeared to be intricate engravings that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. "What the hell are you?" Peter whispered, easing the scrap heap closer. His life sign scanner beeped softly, indicating a faint, biological signature deep within the derelict's central chamber. Whatever it was barely registering, weak, possibly dying. Peter docked with the alien vessel, the scrap heap's magnetic clamps struggling to find purchase on the unusual hull. After donning his pressure suit, he made his way through the breach point and into the strange corridors of the ship. The interior was even more alien than the exterior, with curved passageways that seemed to defy Euclidean geometry. As Peter moved deeper, his suit lights revealed symbols etched into the walls, similar to those outside but more elaborate, almost like a written language. Following his scanner, Peter eventually reached what appeared to be the ship's central chamber. The room was dominated by a raised dais, and upon it lay a creature that made Peter's breath catch in his throat. It was wolf-like in appearance, but larger than any earth canine, with a body that seemed almost ethereal. Its fur was a deep midnight blue, with streaks of silver that seemed to capture and reflect the light from Peter's suit. The creature's eyes were tightly shut, its body trembling with each shallow breath. It was clearly starving, its ribs visible beneath the matted fur. The cosmic wolf. The legend was real. Without hesitation, Peter reached for his emergency rations, nutritional paste designed to sustain human life in the harshest conditions. He knelt beside the creature, uncapping the container. "Hey there," he said softly, not expecting the creature to understand. "Let's see if this helps you." The wolf's nostrils flared at the scent of food, and its eyes cracked open, revealing irises that shimmered with an internal light, like tiny galaxies suspended in darkness. With trembling movements, it began to consume the offered paste. As the creature ate, Peter felt a strange sensation, a tingling at the back of his neck that rapidly spread throughout his body. The air around them seemed to shimmer, and an odd energy filled the chamber. The wolf's body began to emit a soft, pulsating light that grew in intensity until Peter had to shield his eyes. When he looked again, the wolf was gone. In its place was a woman, or something that resembled a woman. Her form was slender yet strong, with skin that held the same midnight blue tone as the wolf's fur, marked with silvery patterns that seemed to shift and change. Her eyes retained that strange, cosmic quality, stars and nebulae swirling in their depths as she regarded Peter with a mixture of wariness and gratitude. Peter stumbled backward, his hand instinctively moving toward his sidearm before stopping himself. The woman made no threatening moves. Instead, she remained on the dais, her posture suggesting exhaustion despite the transformation. "Who are you?" he managed to ask. The woman's lips moved, but what emerged was an unfamiliar language, musical and complex. She seemed to realize the communication barrier, and instead reached toward Peter slowly, her movements deliberate and non-threatening. Her hand stopped just short of his chest, hovering questioningly. Something in her eyes, a desperation, a plea, made Peter nod hesitantly. When her palm made contact with his suit, directly over his heart, the world exploded into sensation. Energy coursed through him like liquid crystal, expanding his senses beyond anything he'd experienced. Suddenly, Peter could feel the ship around them, every vibration in the metal, every surge of remaining power in its systems. He could sense the woman's heartbeat, its rhythm aligning with his own. And with this heightened awareness came understanding. Not words, exactly, but impressions. She was Riella, though Rhea seemed to echo more prominently in his mind. She was of a species called the Veilith, beings capable of shape-shifting and energy bonding, and she was being hunted. As their consciousness remained linked, Peter saw fragmented images, massive warships bearing down on smaller vessels, Veilith in both humanoid and wolf forms being captured or killed, laboratories where unspeakable experiments were conducted. The images were accompanied by a name that filled him with inexplicable dread: Dominion. The connection broke as Rhea withdrew her hand, leaving Peter gasping. The universe seemed to contract back to normal dimensions. But something had changed. He felt different, more alive, more aware, as though a dormant part of him had been awakened. "The Dominion," he said, the name feeling bitter on his tongue. "They're after you." Rhea nodded, understanding his words now despite the earlier language barrier. She moved to a nearby control panel, somehow still operational, and manipulated its surface. Images appeared, depicting a vast armada of ships bearing an emblem that resembled a stylized gauntlet crushing a star. The message was clear. The Dominion, a powerful empire spanning multiple star systems, was systematically hunting down and exterminating the Veilith. And through their bonding, Peter was now irrevocably linked to this conflict. Before he could process this revelation, an alarm blared from both the alien ship and Peter's own communicator. Rhea's eyes widened in panic as she rapidly interacted with the control panel, A holographic display materialized, showing 3 massive warships approaching their position. They've detected our bonding, Peter realized, the knowledge somehow available to him. They're coming for us. Rhea nodded grimly, her movements becoming more urgent as she gathered what appeared to be personal items from around the chamber. She gestured toward the exit, her meaning unmistakable. They needed to leave. Now. Peter didn't need to be told twice. My ship. It's small, but it's fast. Come on. They raced through the twisted corridors, back to the scrap heap. As they reached the airlock, an explosion rocked the derelict vessel. The Dominion ships had arrived and were already firing, not bothering with warnings or demands for surrender. Once aboard, Peter launched immediately, disengaging from the alien ship with such haste that the scrap heap's hull screamed in protest. The small vessel shot away from the derelict, just as another volley of weapons fire tore through it, reducing Rhea's ship to expanding debris. "Hold on!" Peter shouted as he pushed the scrap heap to its limits, diving into a dense asteroid field. The pursuing warships were too large to follow directly, but they launched smaller attack craft that weaved through the floating rocks with alarming agility. Peter had spent years navigating the treacherous debris of the Void Sector, and now that experience paid dividends. The scrap heap danced between asteroids, using the larger ones as shields against the pursuing vessel's weapons fire. Plasma bolts sizzled past the viewports, close enough that the cockpit temperature spiked with each near miss. But there was something else aiding their escape, something new. Peter found himself anticipating the movements of both asteroids and pursuers with uncanny precision. It was as though he could feel the trajectories, sense the intentions of the enemy pilots. Beside him, Rhea had placed her hand on the ship's control panel. Her eyes were closed in concentration, and Peter noticed with astonishment that the scrap heap's shields, which had been operating at minimum capacity due to power conservation, were now deflecting weapons fire more effectively. "Are you doing that?" he asked incredulously. Rhea nodded without opening her eyes. "Energy, redirect," she managed in halting English, the first words she had spoken that he could understand. Through a combination of Peter's flying and Rhea's energy manipulation, they managed to lose their immediate pursuers. But the Dominion warships continued their relentless advance. They needed a more permanent solution. "There," Peter decided, pointing toward a slowly rotating planetoid. "Its core has unusual mineral deposits. Should mask our energy signature if we power down and hide inside one of the deeper craters." The scrap heap limped into the shadow of the planetoid, settling into a crater on its dark side. Peter shut down all non-essential systems, the cockpit falling into near-total darkness. Only the emergency lights remained, casting a soft red glow that accentuated the alien qualities of Rhea's features. In the sudden quiet, reality caught up with Peter. He was harboring a fugitive from the most powerful military force in known space. He had attacked their ships, or at least evaded them, which would be considered just as hostile. There was no going back to his solitary existence now. "Why?" he asked finally. "Why are they hunting your people?" Rhea seemed to consider her words carefully, her command of English improving rapidly. "Vaelith. See through. Feel through. Bond through." She touched her chest, then his. "This scares Dominion. Control. They cannot." As she spoke, Peter felt the bonding between them strengthen, allowing him to perceive more than her words alone conveyed. The Vaelith posed a unique threat to the Dominion's control because of their telepathic abilities, their capacity to teleport over short distances, and most of all, their energy symbiosis capabilities, the bonding that Peter had experienced. "The Dominion fears what it can't dominate," Peter summarized, earning a nod from Rhea. They remained in their hiding place for hours, speaking little but communicating much through their growing bond. Peter learned of the Vaelith genocide, how an entire civilization had been reduced to scattered refugees in less than a decade. Rhea, in turn, seemed to absorb knowledge of human culture and language at an astonishing rate. As they waited, Peter wrestled with his conscience. He could still try to extricate himself from this situation, perhaps surrender to the Dominion, claim he had been coerced or confused. But the images he had seen through Rhea's memories haunted him. The Dominion's cruelty toward the Vailith was methodical and absolute. And now, through their bond, he found himself increasingly unwilling to abandon her. "We can't stay here forever," he said finally. "The Dominion will establish a search pattern eventually. We need a plan." Before Rhea could respond, the scrap heap's communication system crackled to life with an incoming transmission on a highly secured channel, one that should have been accessible only to Dominion Military Command. Peter hesitated, then accepted the transmission. A holographic image materialized. A man in an ornate military uniform adorned with medals and insignia of rank. His face was angular, with cold eyes that seemed to look through Peter rather than at him. "Salvage pilot Peter Novak," the man said, his voice cultured but devoid of warmth. "I am Admiral Corrin, Supreme Commander of the Dominion Fleet. I believe you have something that belongs to us." Peter's fingers tightened on the control console. "I don't know what you're talking about." Corrin's smile was devoid of humor. "Come now, Peter. We detected the bonding event. Most impressive, actually. One of the strongest we've recorded. But then, you always were special." A chill ran down Peter's spine. "What do you mean, always?" "Oh, this is delicious." Corrin's smile widened fractionally. "They really did wipe your memory clean, didn't they? Your parents were quite thorough. Well, before we had to eliminate them for their treachery." The Admiral touched a control off-screen, and a series of images appeared beside his face. Laboratory settings, scientific equipment, and what appeared to be a child in a containment unit. A child with Peter's face. "Project Chimera," Corrin continued. "The perfect weapon against the Vailith threat. A human-Vailith hybrid designed to infiltrate and exterminate. Your parents were brilliant scientists. Truly. They engineered you with all the bonding capabilities of a Vailith, but the appearance and physiology of a human. The perfect Trojan horse." Peter felt the blood drain from his face. "You're lying." "Am I? How do you think you bonded so easily with the Vailith female? Why do you think you've always felt different, disconnected? Your parents sabotaged the final programming, gave you free will instead of loyalty to the Dominion. We had to eliminate them, of course, but by then you had already been released into the general population. We've been monitoring you ever since, waiting for the right moment to activate you." Rhea had moved to Peter's side, her hand gripping his arm tightly. Through their bond, he could feel her shock, confusion, and a growing sense of betrayal. "I'm not your weapon," Peter said through clenched teeth. "You were created to end the Vailith species," Corrin replied calmly. "It is your purpose. Yet, here you are, bonded to one, protecting one. Why betray your very nature, Peter?" Before he could respond, the transmission was suddenly interrupted by bursts of static. Alarms began blaring on the Dominion ships visible in the background of Corrin's transmission. The Admiral's expression shifted from smug superiority to alarm. "What is happening?" he demanded of someone off-screen. "Report!" The transmission abruptly cut off, replaced by a new signal. This time, the face that appeared was clearly Vailith, elderly by the standards of their kind, with deep blue skin etched with silver markings that appeared more elaborate than Rhea's. "Peter Novak and Riella," the elder Vailith said, her voice melodious despite the urgency in her tone. "I am Seraphine. The Resistance has begun its assault on the Dominion fleet. You must come now. The distraction will not last long." The view screen displayed coordinates, not far from their current position. "Resistance?" Peter echoed, glancing at Rhea, who appeared just as surprised. "There is no time to explain. Seraphine insisted. Many bonded pairs fight with us, human and Valeth together. Come now, while the Dominion's attention is divided. The transmission ended, leaving Peter and Rhea staring at each other in stunned silence. Could be a trap, Peter said cautiously. Rhea shook her head. Seraphine, Elder Council, thought dead. Her eyes conveyed what words could not. This was a chance they had to take. Peter reactivated the scrap heap systems and set course for the coordinates. As they emerged from behind the planetoid, they witnessed an astonishing sight. The 3 Dominion warships were under attack from what appeared to be a swarm of smaller vessels, employing hit-and-run tactics. Explosions blossomed across the massive ships' hulls as their defenses struggled to track the nimble attackers. Taking advantage of the chaos, Peter piloted the scrap heap along a trajectory that kept them in the shadow of the fighting. As they approached the coordinates, a section of what had appeared to be ordinary space seemed to shimmer and part, revealing a hidden docking bay within an asteroid that their sensors had not detected. The scrap heap slipped inside, and the concealing field reactivated behind them. They found themselves in a bustling hangar, filled with vessels of various designs, some human, some clearly Valeth, and others that appeared to be hybrids of the 2 technologies. As they disembarked, they were met by Seraphine herself, flanked by several humans, and Valeth, who moved with a coordinated precision that suggested they were bonded pairs. "Welcome to Sanctuary," Seraphine said, her physical voice even more melodious in person. "The last refuge of the free Valeth and their human allies." Peter's head was swimming with questions, but before he could voice any of them, a deafening explosion rocked the asteroid base. Klaxons blared as emergency lighting activated. "The Dominion has broken through our outer defenses." One of the humans, a stocky man who introduced himself as Jake, reported. "Admiral Corrin's flagship is approaching our position." "We must move quickly," Seraphine declared. "The time for hiding is over. Today we strike at the heart of the beast." Peter found himself swept up in a flurry of activity as the resistance fighters prepared for battle. Rhea stayed close to his side, her presence a constant reassurance through their bond. They were outfitted with combat gear that incorporated both human and Valeth technology. Lightweight armor that seemed to respond to their movements and weapons that pulsed with energy, similar to what Peter had felt during the bonding. "The plan was to attack in 3 days, Seraphine explained, as they hurried through the corridors of the base. "But Corrin's pursuit of you has forced our hand. We must strike now, while their fleet is divided." "Strike where?" Peter asked, struggling to keep pace with the Elder Valeth's surprisingly swift movements. "The Nexus," Seraphine replied grimly. "The command center that coordinates all Dominion operations against our people. Admiral Corrin will be recalled there once he realizes the scale of our assault." They reached what appeared to be a war room, where a holographic display showed the positions of Dominion forces and resistance fighters throughout the sector. The battle was spreading, with skirmishes erupting across multiple systems as hidden resistance cells launched simultaneous attacks. "For 10 years, we have built this network," Seraphine continued. "Humans who recognize the injustice of the Dominion's crusade against us. Valeth who escaped the purges. Together, we have waited for the right moment to strike." "And you think this is it?" Peter asked skeptically. "Because of us?" "Because of the bond you share," Seraphine corrected. "It is the strongest we have ever witnessed between a human and Valeth. It gives us hope, and more importantly, it proves what we have long suspected about you, Peter Novak." Peter tensed. "That I'm some kind of hybrid weapon?" "That you are the bridge," Seraphine replied. "Created by the Dominion to destroy us. Yes, but your parents saw a different potential in you. They believed that the same qualities that would make you an effective weapon could instead make you a powerful ally. They gave their lives to ensure you would have the freedom to choose your own path." Another explosion, closer this time, interrupted the conversation. A resistance fighter burst into the room. They've breached the outer hull. Dominion troops are inside the base. Seraphine's expression hardened. Then we accelerate our plans. Captain Torres, prepare the assault team for immediate departure. We make for the Nexus now. A tall, severe-looking woman nodded sharply. Yes, Elder. Strike team is ready. Peter, Riella, Seraphine turned to them. Will you join us? The choice must be yours. Peter looked at Rhea, feeling the turmoil of emotions through their bond. Fear, determination, hope, and something deeper that he wasn't ready to name. But beneath it all was certainty. Whatever he was, hybrid, weapon, or simply a salvage pilot who had made a fateful choice, he couldn't turn back now. We're in, he said, speaking for both of them. The next hours passed in a blur of preparation and combat. The resistance fighters fought their way out of the besieged base, using a combination of conventional weapons and the unique abilities granted by human Valeth bonding. Peter discovered that his own abilities were growing stronger. He could disrupt electronic systems with a touch, sense energy flows with increasing precision, and even anticipate enemy movements seconds before they occurred. Rhea fought at his side, shifting between her humanoid and wolf forms as the situation demanded. In wolf form, she was a blur of midnight blue and silver, tearing through Dominion troops with terrifying efficiency. In humanoid form, she manipulated energy fields to protect their allies and disable enemy weapons. They eventually fought their way to a small fleet of stealth vessels that the Resistance had prepared for the assault on the Nexus. As they departed the asteroid base, which was set to self-destruct behind them to cover their escape, Peter found himself aboard the lead ship with Seraphine, Rhea, and the core strike team. The Nexus is more than just a command center, Seraphine explained, as they accelerated toward their target. It is where Emperor Vex oversees the extermination of our people. It is where Admiral Corrin developed the technology to track and neutralize Valeth energy signatures. And it is where we will end this war. The Nexus, when it finally came into view, was unlike anything Peter had imagined. It resembled an enormous mechanical spider suspended in space, its central hub connected to 8 massive arms that housed communication arrays, weapons platforms, and docking bays for Dominion warships. The entire structure pulsed with energy that felt abrasive to Peter's newly enhanced senses. How do we get inside that thing? He asked, the scale of the task before them suddenly overwhelming. Captain Torres pointed to a schematic on the ship's display. We've identified a maintenance access point here, on the underside of the third arm. Security is lighter there, and our intelligence suggests we can bypass most of the internal defenses if we enter through this route. The Resistance ships activated their stealth systems as they approached the massive structure. The Dominion fleet was in disarray, with many ships diverted to deal with the simultaneous uprisings across multiple systems. It was now or never. Their ship docked successfully at the maintenance access point, the Resistance fighters deploying with practiced efficiency. Peter, Rhea, and Seraphine joined Captain Torres in the lead group, making their way through the maintenance tunnels toward the Nexus's central hub. They encountered sporadic resistance, security drones, and the occasional patrol, but nothing they couldn't handle. It seemed the Dominion had indeed been caught unprepared for an assault on their command center. This is too easy, Peter muttered as they approached the central hub. The Dominion believes itself invulnerable here, Seraphine replied. Pride has made them careless. The central hub was a vast, circular chamber, dominated by a holographic display of the entire sector. Dominion officers moved about with urgent purpose, coordinating responses to the Resistance attacks. At the center of it all, seated on a raised platform, was a figure that could only be Emperor Vex himself. A tall, imposing man whose elaborate uniform made Admiral Corrin's look modest by comparison. And standing beside him, his face contorted with fury, was Admiral Corrin. The Resistance strike team burst into the chamber, weapons ready. The Dominion officers froze in shock. No unauthorized personnel had ever breached the Nexus's central hub before. "What is the meaning of this?" Emperor Vex demanded, rising from his seat. "How dare you?" His words cut off as he recognized Seraphine. "Elder Seraphine, we were told you perished on Vale Prime." "Reports of my death were strategic," Seraphine replied coolly, "as were reports of the Valeth's defeat." Admiral Corrin's gaze had locked onto Peter and Rhea. "The hybrid and his pet," he sneered. "How fitting that you should be here to witness the final defeat of the Resistance." Before anyone could respond, Corrin activated a device on his wrist. Alarms blared throughout the Nexus, and security barriers slammed down, sealing the chamber. "Did you really think we weren't prepared for this?" Corrin laughed. "Your pathetic uprising ends here. The Nexus is equipped with a quantum pulse generator, capable of targeting and severing every human Valeth bond within 100 light-years. One activation, and your entire resistance collapses." Peter felt Rhea tense beside him, felt her fear spike through their bond. If what Corrin said was true, countless bonded pairs would be forcibly separated, an experience that could be fatal for both participants. "You would sacrifice your own people?" Captain Torres demanded. "There are humans bonded to Valeth throughout the sector." "Acceptable losses," Emperor Vex said dismissively. "The hybrid experiment failed. It is time to cleanse the galaxy of this contamination, once and for all." Corrin moved toward a control panel, his intention clear. Peter reacted instinctively, drawing on the energy flowing through his bond with Rhea. He reached out, not with his weapon, but with his mind, targeting the sophisticated implants that all high-ranking Dominion officers wore, the neural interfaces that connected them directly to their command systems. Corrin froze mid-step, his body going rigid as his implants malfunctioned, all at once. He collapsed to the floor, twitching as the technology embedded in his body turned against him. "What have you done?" Vex demanded, backing away as Peter approached. "What I was made to do," Peter replied, advancing steadily. "Connect with technology, disrupt energy patterns. I'm just not using it the way you intended." The Resistance fighters had already subdued the other Dominion officers in the chamber. Seraphine approached Emperor Vex, her ancient eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and determination. "For a decade, you have hunted us like animals," she said softly. "You have destroyed our worlds, scattered our people, and committed atrocities in the name of security. Today, that ends." Vex's composure crumbled. "You don't understand. The Valeth bonding, it threatens the very fabric of our society. Humans and aliens, sharing consciousness? It's unnatural. It corrupts. The purity of the human race." "Is a myth," Peter interrupted. "I'm living proof of that. Human Valeth. We're stronger together than apart. Your fear doesn't justify genocide." With Vex and Corrin subdued, the Resistance quickly took control of the Nexus's systems. Captain Torres and her technical expert, a Valeth named Kale, worked to broadcast the truth about the Dominion's actions to every system under their control. Footage of the concentration camps, the experiments, the mass executions, all of it was transmitted across the quantum communication network that the Dominion had built to coordinate their empire. Uprisings that had begun as isolated skirmishes swelled into full-scale rebellions as the truth spread. Dominion ships, faced with the reality of the cause they had been serving, began to stand down or even defect to the Resistance. In the hours that followed, Peter and Rhea remained at the heart of the Nexus, coordinating with Resistance cells across the sector. Through their bond, they could maintain communication even when conventional channels were blocked by Dominion loyalists still fighting a losing battle. Admiral Corrin, recovered from the initial shock of his implant's failure, but securely restrained, watched Peter with a mixture of hatred and something that might have been admiration. "You were supposed to be our greatest weapon," he said during a quiet moment. "Instead, you became our downfall." Peter regarded the man who had, in a twisted way, been responsible for his creation. "You gave me the ability to bond with the Valeth, to understand them. Did it never occur to you that understanding might lead to compassion rather than destruction? Corin's laugh was bitter. Compassion is a weakness. The Dominion has no use for it. And that's why the Dominion will fall, Peter replied. A civilization built on fear and hatred can't stand against one built on understanding and cooperation. As the Resistance's control solidified, Seraphine approached Peter and Rhea with news from across the sector. The Vayleth hidden throughout Dominion space are emerging, she reported. Many have been living in secret, bonded to humans who protected them. Now they can live in the open again. What happens now? Peter asked, suddenly aware of how exhausted he was. The events of the past days, had it only been days, had transformed him from a solitary salvage pilot to a key figure in a galactic revolution. Now we rebuild, Seraphine said simply. The Dominion's control is broken, but the damage they have done will take generations to heal. Both our peoples have suffered. Both will need to learn to live together in peace. In the days that followed, as the Resistance transitioned from a fighting force to the foundation of a new interstellar coalition, Peter and Rhea found themselves increasingly drawn to the fringes of the action. The politics of peace, they discovered, were in many ways more complex than the simplicities of war. We should go, Rhea suggested one evening as they watched negotiations between former Dominion worlds and the emerging Vayleth human alliance. Her command of English had improved dramatically, though their bond still provided the deeper context to her words. There are still Vayleth in hiding who do not know the war is over. They will need guides to bring them home. Peter nodded, feeling the rightness of her suggestion through their bond. The scrap heap isn't much, but it's fast, and it can go places larger ships can't. We could make a difference out there. Their departure from the Nexus was quiet, with only Seraphine and a few close allies seeing them off. The elder Vayleth embraced both of them, her ancient eyes bright with emotion. You have given our people a future, she told them. Now go and help those who do not yet know they are free. The scrap heap, repaired and upgraded with technology from both human and Vayleth engineers, departed the Nexus with little fanfare. Peter set course for the outer regions of the sector, where isolated Vayleth enclaves might still be hiding in fear of Dominion persecution. As they left the bustling activity of the former Dominion Command Center behind, Peter felt a sense of rightness settling over him. He had spent years seeking solitude in the Void Sector, believing himself disconnected from the wider galaxy. Now he understood why. He had been incomplete, waiting for a connection he hadn't known was possible. Beside him, Rhea stood looking out at the stars, her form silhouetted against the vast expanse of space. Through their bond, Peter could feel her contentment, her hope for the future, and the deep affection that had grown between them. "Where to first?" she asked, turning to face him with those cosmic eyes that had first captivated him on her derelict ship. Peter smiled, reaching out to take her hand. The energy of their bond hummed between them, a constant reminder of the connection that had changed everything. "Wherever we're needed," he replied. "The void isn't empty anymore." Together, they piloted the scrap heap toward distant stars, leaving behind the silence that had once defined the Void Sector. In its place was the promise of new beginnings, for the scattered Vayleth, for the liberated Dominion worlds, and for the hybrid who had found his purpose not in destruction, but in healing. The cosmic wolf and her human companion vanished into the stars, their legend already beginning to spread across a galaxy, learning to embrace the power of bonds that transcended species, space, and the prejudices of the past.